right sizing kasi hindi naman ibig sabihin yan tanggalan kagad eh. Sa ibang mga departamento, ang tinitingnan siyempre duplication ng functions. Ano ba ang pangangailangan? Situating personnel doon sa mga trabaho na akma sila, tugma sila.
Magantay po tayo kung meron na po silang polisiya at guide para sa right sizing, and I don't see it happening in the short term dahil mahirap po mag-right size ng buong government. Nahirapan nga kami doon sa LGU namin, all the more dito na buong national government. But I think it's a good direction sa ating Pangulo para po nare-review natin kung lahat ba ng mga empleyado at lahat ng mga posisyon ay useful siya.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The big story tonight.
The Marcos administration continues to allay fears among government workers over their right-sizing plan.
But authorities clarify it will not immediately result in massive layoffs. Here's the big story.
Government workers are expressing fear over the Marcos administration's plan to right-size government agencies. The Budget Department earlier said that they aim to save government funds by achieving a small bureaucracy and fixing agencies that have repetitive or overlapping functions. The DBM admitted, though, that the plan could affect at least 2 million government workers. Still, Labor Secretary Bienvenido Laguesma defended the move, saying it will not immediately result in massive layoffs.
Ang sinasabi sa right sizing, lalo na sa akin, nanggaling ako sa pribadong sektor din, tinitignan yung proseso ng streamlining of procedures. Meron din pagkakataon na ang ilang departamento, mas higit na nangangailangan ng karagdagang tao dahil ang serbisyo nila, for example, Cheryl, social services, no?
Vice President and DepEd Secretary Sara Duterte is also backing the right-sizing proposal, but she says she does not see it happening anytime soon.
I don't see it happening in the short term dahil mahirap po mag-right size ng buong government. But I think it's a good direction sa ating Pangulo para po nare-review natin kung lahat ba ng mga empleyado at lahat ng mga posisyon ay useful siya.
The Trade Department, for its part, says it will review its own organizational structure in line with the President's directive.
With the shift to digital technology, DTI will improve employees' digital expertise and skills and empower them in their respective jobs.
The Civil Service Commission says it supports any move that would ensure greater efficiency in public sector administration. It also assured that it will thoroughly study any proposed bill on right-sizing the bureaucracy. Senator Bongo also supports the move in order to provide faster and more reliable service to the public. But Go emphasized that when it comes to right-sizing, there must be careful balance between eliminating redundancies and inefficiencies in the bureaucracy. Senator Coco Pimentel, meanwhile, said the trick is to open our mind that a department can be, quote, lean and mean and still be a department. But Pimentel added the executive branch should take the lead in identifying agencies affected by their proposal. Senator Cheese Escudero, on the other hand, said he will await the complete proposal of the executive department before commenting further. The same goes for Senator Mig Zubiri. Zubiri said he will first seek clarification with the Budget and Finance departments before making any further comment on the proposal. Aryan Kalumbiran, We Are One News.
Here to give us their insights on the government's right-sizing plan is Ana Enriquez Herron, President of the Public Services Labor Independent Confederation, or PS-Link. She's joining us via Zoom. Welcome to the big story, Ms. Herron.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Sir Robbie and Ma'am Gretchen, and thank you for having me in your program.
Ma'am, your reaction to all this talk about right-sizing. On the one hand, government says, and this is not the only time, this is not the first time we're hearing this from the national government, na kailangan din tayong to be efficient, to be lean and mean. As they say, malaki naman talaga ang bürokrasya. But what are your thoughts?
Well, as it is now, I'm going to base my comments on the pronouncement of the DBM secretary, which is, just saying that that's right sizing, but she already expressed the target like reduction of 5% and trying to realize around 14 billion savings. To me, it's not right sizing. It's really downsizing. It's going to result and target mass layoff if I'm going to take that pronouncement of the DBM secretary. Just to say that PS Link is not opposed to real right sizing, because I think it's been expressed by Secretary Laguesman, even the Vice President, that it is meant to really look at the overlapping function and see redundancy, and it's really meant to increase efficiency, effectivity, and productivity of government employees. But that's not what I see is the meaning behind the pronouncement of the DBM secretary.
Then, Ms. Herron, that said, what would at least be a proper approach to addressing the question?
First, let's look at the situation now. As I said, it's quite ill-timed, to be talking about downsizing the bureaucracy when we are facing rising unemployment, inflation, and then we are in the midst of the pandemic still, and people are expecting so much from the government in terms of basic services, and as it is now, we are still inadequate in terms of delivering public goods and services to the population. So instead of talking downsizing, we need to look at how using the current workforce, we'll be able to really address the needs of the population. So I think it can be done later, and I think they should consult with public sector unions, for example, because we are going to be directly impacted by any attempt to downsize the bureaucracy.
Ma'am, but what would your proposal be in order to make the government more efficient? Because some are saying it's about time to go digital, to be able to streamline processes. How can we achieve this without losing the efficiency or effectivity of government? Because you say it's not right sizing but downsizing.
Well, I think we should welcome the use of technology and optimizing it in order to increase efficiency. But I think before doing that, I think the workforce should also be prepared, retooling, upgrading the skills so that it will not be seen as you're being victimized by technology or introduction of technology to the workplace. So I think it should be coupled with capacity of increasing the capacity of government employees to use that. I mean, you can have the technology, but the people behind who's going to operate that should also be equipped to really achieve yung efficiency that they would like to see, sa bureaucracy.
Ma'am, one of the things that has been said is that the approach will likely not be on a national level. In fact, President Marcos in his first briefings also said maybe we'll leave it to the departments so that they can make their recommendations. We can do it at a per unit level. Question lang po, has there been an example in the past that you would consider as best practice or a good experience where the process of consultation was followed, everything was considered, and then at the end of the day, there was some semblance of right sizing?
Well, I've been in the government for 40 years now, and I have seen reorganization from Cory time to up to President Arroyo. And what I have seen, it's all the same. Like it's for efficiency, etc., and then some semblance of consultation. But what we see afterwards, the bureaucracy is ballooned with contractual workers. So I'm really wondering why, for example, each agency will say, okay, you have your rationalization plan. It was called like that, under Executive Order 366 during Arroyo administration. And then every agency has also given the opportunity to look at their own staffing pattern, how the size of the staff will will be able to fulfill their mandates, to deliver their mandates. But what we see is not really, achieving that. Instead, we see the ballooning number of contractual employees in the government, in all branches of the government.
Ito pa nga po yung usapan natin tungkol sa budget. Saan nga po ba tayo kukuha ng pera to pay off our debts, along with a struggling economy? You've been in government for quite a long time. Ano po ba yung mga pwede natin bawasan? Or where can we cost cut instead of laying off people or right-sizing, downsizing? Where can we focus our attention to? Is there anything that you see that we can have less of?
Well, let's look at how yung sa budget, no, kung paano yung allocation. Tingnan natin yung paggamit ng ating taxes. Tingnan natin doon sa taunang pagbabudget ng gobyerno kung saan inilalagay, no, ang buwis, ang pondo. Ang tingin ko dapat ay mailagay yan una doon sa mga batayang serbisyo publiko na kinakailangan ng population, no? At do away muna yung mga halimbawa, yung do away with the travels, yung mga ganun muna, iwasan muna yung mga yan na hindi necessary. So, tingnan natin, no, yung proper na allocation at paggamit ng buwis ng bayan para sa taunang budget ng buong bureaucracia o ng buong gobyerno.
Ms. Herron, isang tanong na lang po, because you made a good point kanina that we've seen this in the past. We've seen right-sizing for the sake of efficiency, for a lean and mean government. Pagkatapos, eventually we hear, ang daming consultant, ang daming mga kinukuha, ang daming kine-create nga, even at the highest levels. I think the first order of President Marcos, in fact, was even to rationalize, get rid of all of these previously non-existing positions, even as high as assistant secretary, undersecretary, a lot of consultants, departments, units that didn't used to be there. But to your point, is that at least, it's never going to be painless, but at least is it a fair starting point to start with the consultants and all of these?
Yes. I think yung sinasabi nilang excess fat, no, is not on the rank and file. It's actually, remember, no, we are only about 2 million government employees and we are serving 110 million population. Pero nakikita naman namin ang excess fat ay nasa taas, hindi nasa baba. So I think tama yung sinabi. Tingnan muna natin yung nasa taas. Kailangan ba natin yung mga matataas na posisyon? As you said, maraming consultant, maraming assistant secretary, undersecretary. No? Sa tingin ko, yun yung dapat lean and mean in terms ng management and public administration. Yun muna yung tingnan.
Alright, maraming salamat. PS Link President Annie Herron.
Thank you very much.
Join us in the conversation. Our big question tonight: which government agencies do you think will be affected by the proposed right-sizing? Share your thoughts on our Facebook and YouTube live stream or post a tweet with the hashtag #TheBigStory. We'll be reading some of your comments later on in the program.
And then after the break, we'll talk about the push for no booster, no entry policy as the country continues to grapple with low booster vaccination rates. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
My father built more and better roads, produced more rice than all administrations before his. President Rodrigo Roa Duterte built more and better than all the administrations succeeding my father's. Much has been built, and so well, that the economic dogma of dispersing industry to develop the least likely places has been upturned. Development was brought to them. Investors are now setting up industries along the promising routes built. And yet, the potential of this country is not exhausted. Following these giant steps, we will continue to build. I will complete on schedule the projects that have been started. I'm not interested in taking credit. I want to build on success that's already happening. We will be presenting the public with a comprehensive infrastructure plan. 6 years could be just about enough time. No part of our country will be neglected. Progress will be made wherever there are
You're watching The Big Story here on One News. As COVID-19 cases increase, the League of Provinces of the Philippines said there is now a need to push for a no booster shot, no entry policy for establishments to control rising infections. Here's what we know. This isn't the first time that the no booster, no entry policy was pushed. In early February, now former presidential advisor for entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion eyed for a no booster, no entry policy to encourage more individuals to get their booster shot. This, however, was met with mixed reviews from health experts and government officials. Among the government's targets for 2022 include the vaccination of 90 million Filipinos by the end of the second quarter and allocating 72 million boosters for the adult population. But as of July 12, only about 71 million Filipinos have been fully vaccinated, while only around 950,000 Filipinos have received their second booster shot.
Should the Marcos administration enforce this no booster, no entry policy? To discuss this, we have with us on the show Private Sector Advisory Council member Joey Concepcion. Good evening. Welcome to The Big Story, Mr. Concepcion.
Good evening, Gretchen. Good evening, Robbie.
Sir, always on the other side of this is always the qualifier from everybody, acknowledging that we cannot actually mandate vaccination for our people. Yet we still keep talking about proposals such as this. How different or how far is this from actually trying to mandate without any law, or even a law for that matter, that everybody says will not pass?
Well, you know, as far as February, I was pushing for that same idea, no? And at that time, Sec Maynard felt that it was not legal to do such, and so the government did not support the proposal. And I think if you do the mandate now, when the booster uptake is very low, the problem is that we're coming from a lockdown. We're faced with a lot of headwinds with the inflation going up, and consumers are feeling it, as well as the manufacturers who are having a hard time passing the price increases. So if you don't have a booster shot, you can't enter the business establishments, the restaurants and all of that, the movie theaters. Their sales will really be affected. So it's not practical. Maybe unless the government will see that it's legal, and maybe what they can do is give them a timeline, say 60 days or 90 days from today, we will implement this order. No? So you give everybody the chance to take the booster shot. No? But if you implement it a week or 2 weeks from now, then you will see a lot of problems again with the restaurant owners complaining, the fast food owners complaining, and other business establishments because the booster uptake is quite low.
Yeah, but Mr. Concepcion, we'll leave it at that muna, at least the question of whether or not it's legal or unconstitutional. But to something else that you said, is it possible also that we are trying to attack this problem on the wrong end? Because at the other end of it, the basic problem is still uptake for vaccination and, for that matter, booster shots. Shouldn't we all just instead be concentrating on precisely how to convince more people to take their boosters, and that takes care of everything else?
That's right. Although, the challenge that we face, in fact, we met Secretary Benhar-Abalos a couple of days back together with the ACE group, and he loved our suggestions. So we will try to make a serious effort again to really campaign the importance of the booster shots. One incentive that we have proposed in that recommendation to the President is that if we are able to hit 70% of the 70% that have taken the primary doses, which is basically 50%. So if it's 70 million that have taken those primary doses, we have to target at least 70% of that. So that's about 50 million. Then maybe if we accomplish that, or the different regions or provinces accomplish that, then the chance of outdoor mask can be optional. So that's the kind of reward or privilege if we're able to attain that. And so I think that is one idea that we can do. You incentivize people to, if they attain this goal, then we can make outdoor masks optional for those areas that have attained that. So vaccine mandate, I think it's getting pretty tough to push that. If the current group wants to push it, you can't do it tomorrow. You have to give them lead time to be able to get the population boosted.
With the new variants dominating now the COVID-19 pandemic here in the Philippines, do you think it's actually possible or feasible for us, and do you see it happening soon enough, us going maskless? Because yesterday, the doctors were saying that we should still keep our masks on, given that these new variants are actually evasive of the current vaccines. So with that said, how do we get people sold on the idea of taking their booster shots?
First of all, what we've recommended basically is 70% of the 70% that have taken the primary doses. If we attain that, in attaining the booster level, by the way, it's not easy. No? It's a tall order to even attain 50% booster rate, since we're way below 20%. No? So, but that's an incentive. There are other conditions. No, we should be basically in green, which you are recommending. ADAR below 6, HCUR way below 50%. No? So those are the incentives. So I believe that it is possible. Of course, we're not talking here of indoor. Huh? We're talking here of only just outdoor, and that is a way of giving incentives. In fact, President Marcos has been looking towards that side, no? And this is why we're making this recommendation. So you have to, if you look at the other ASEAN countries, many of them have removed the outdoor mask. But of course, their booster uptake is much higher than the Philippines now. So we have a long way to go. From the 20s, we have to take that up close to 60%, 70%, hopefully, no?
What are the lessons so far from the private sector, particularly with workers? That on the one hand, you face the same, our employers face the same questions and the same dilemmas. You cannot mandate it. At the same time, for the service sector in particular, they do need their workers to be on site. How has the private sector navigated this? What are the best practices and remaining challenges on that front?
Well, remember, Robbie, earlier on, there were certain mandates done. No vax, no ride. There was also a time when the government allowed that employees who are not vaccinated will be required to take an RT-PCR test every 2 weeks at their expense. So we used that, and we were able to convince many of our employees to take the booster shots. The primary doses first and eventually the booster shots. But now, without that, we have seen that a number of employees who have taken the booster shot wants to take actually the second shot, no? Which HTAC is preventing those below 60 years old, especially 50 years old and above, to take the second booster shot. So, but yes, it can be done, and that was a lesson, a learning point for us. No? And of course, we know our employees. We have certain levels of authority that we can really encourage them, and they know that the risk of wasting their sick leaves as they get sick. I mean, that some of these sick leaves are incashable. No, so then again, we have our ways, and that's why the vaccination rate in the private sector is quite high.
Okay, maraming salamat po. That was Private Sector Advisory Council member Joey Concepcion. We will pause for a short break. Keep it here on One News.
The voice of 32.2 million Filipinos was loud and clear with the message to serve our motherland. And this message has been reiterated in my oath to consecrate myself to the service of the nation. The days ahead may be full of challenges that call for us to be more united as a nation. But let me reiterate this. We can never go wrong if we are a people dedicated to honoring the will of God, to serving our country and our fellow men, and protecting the integrity of our families and the future of our children. If you all take a moment to listen to the call to serve and decide to heed the call, in the same way that many are already devoting their lives.
You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. Let's now take a look back at our big question tonight. Which government agencies do you think will be affected by the proposed right-sizing? Here's what netizens have to say. For Jennifer, far-flung LGUs will likely be affected as she believes they are prone to creating multiple plantilla positions. She believes work in these small government offices could be done by fewer people. For Haven, the planned right-sizing will affect both the Bureau of Customs and the DENR.
While for RC, what matters is whether this proposal can actually remove ghost employees from government agencies. Gillette, on the other hand, opposes the proposed right-sizing. She says that deciding who gets to keep their job in government could be based on patronage politics.
You may also continue to join us in the conversation. Simply use the hashtag #TheBigStory and follow us on Twitter and Facebook at OneNewsPH. Like earlier, comments or tweets will be featured as part of our agenda to include you, the public, in the big story.
That's a can of worms that they open, di ba? Every time you talk about jobs, siyempre, that's always something that's sensitive, di ba? But kanina, we were speaking with PS Link's Annie Herron. She made two very valid points. One is simply, it just starts with consultation. Di ba? Obviously, you don't do this that quickly. And the other thing that she pointed out is, look, we've tried this before, and every single time, biglang yung plantilla mo naman, nag-downsize ka nga. But then all of a sudden, biglang pinapalitan ng mga consultants, di ba? And then it becomes, again, politicized all over again.
Well, ako naisip ko lang, mababawasan yung dadaanan kong proseso para sa pagbayad ng tax. Because I've been long wondering why we have to go through, the mano-mano style. I mean, in many of our processes, getting a birth certificate, for example, getting the documents that we need, why can't things be digitized? But of course, you have to balance that with the human resources part. You can't just say, okay, we'll replace you. Tama, kaya kailangan yung consultations na yan. But I also think that the timing is essential in doing it because now we're facing, economic struggles, trying to recover.
Everybody's trying to get by, and whether you're in the private sector, the public sector, civil society, and so on. Syempre, that's as we said from the start. It's always sensitive. Obviously, mahaba-habang usapan pa to before anything happens.
Pero gusto ko yung booster kanina, may good news lang ako. Yung naalala ko, yung production ko, sabi ko sa kanya, kasi hindi pa siya nakapagpa-booster. Sabi ko sa kanya, baka mawalan ka ng racket. Alam mo, nire-require na ng mga prod house. Ngayon din, nagpa-booster siya.
Ayan, okay. So may points ka doon.
Diba? Maraming paraan di ba?
Okay, that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, The Philippine Star, and Business World Online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more in-depth analysis. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. I'm Gretchen Ho. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.